Back here on the Wicked Boston Show, Rogue Media Sports Network, your host Cam Stuart here, and special guest Anthony Smith from Eagle Insider, talking BC hockey. It's part of 24/7 Sports. And the reason why, Anthony, is not because I'm this diehard BC Eagles fan, okay? That's not the case, but because they have become the Bruins farm system. 6 Bruins prospects taking the ice for Greg Brown and the Eagles this year. And of course, Anthony, none bigger than James Hagens, the number 7 pick in the draft. Well, physically bigger, sure, but no prospect bigger on the ice for the Eagles and the Bruins than James Hagens, pick number 7 overall in the 2025 NHL draft, coming back for his sophomore year at BC. And obviously the expectations were pretty high. This is a guy who was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft through most of last season. For some reason, his value dropped, even though he was 17 years old at the start of the year, and he was 37 points in 37 games in Hockey East. Still on the same pace, 13 points in 13 games, but a different supporting cast around him this year. Not a bunch of guys who are going to play in the NHL at the end of this season. So have you been impressed with James Hagens so far?
Yeah, Cam, thanks again for having me. Yeah, I mean, Hagens has gotten a lot better, I would say. He's become more assertive with the puck. He's about the same in the faceoff dot. There's still some improvement there for sure. But as far as, leading his own line, he's been with kind of a handful of different teammates so far. Last year, he was with Gabe Pro and Leonard for the majority of the season, who were both All-Americans. But now he's started to mix it up a bit. He's still maintained that consistency, even though he's been playing with, other players, less talented players. And I would say the biggest improvement is his shot. His shot is really, really serious now. There was that one goal he scored last weekend against Maine was, from the right side, and it was laser. We didn't really see that a lot last year. There was a lot of, missteps, but he's made some improvements, and it'll definitely be a game he builds on.
It looked like an NHL wrist shot against Maine.
Yeah.
Like that, it absolutely looked like an NHL shot written all over it. And you kind of mentioned it there of like, he's playing with 2 guys in Perreault and Leonard who are really kind of focal points of the team. And this year it's been a bit of a mismatch. We've even seen him on the wing a little bit. I know that concerned a lot of Bruins fans of like, if he was too small to play center, like I don't think putting him out on the wing is necessarily going to change things. That's obviously something that BC needed. How did he look on the wing? And is that something where that is break glass in case of emergency?
Yeah, he wasn't really playing a lot of wing, to be honest with you. That was more of like a situational thing. Like him and Stiga kind of exchange the draws. Sometimes it's
That makes sense.
I can't even remember. Oh, sometimes it's Kami if he takes the draw from if it's on the right side. The referee's lined up on the right side because he's the right-handed shot. But that's just kind of a situational thing, and he's usually the guy who picks up 200 feet all the time and plays the center ice position usually. But I mean, if he is playing the left wing, he's totally equipped to do so. He's got great speed. He's probably the best skater on the team. He is the best skater on the team. So straight line left winger, he could be really good in that position too. Yeah.
And you talk about the 200-foot game there. Obviously, I mean, that's any center in the NHL, especially one that's taken in the top 10, is going to have 200-foot responsibilities. But certainly the Bruins always make a big deal about it of, this center's not ready. He's got to play a full Bruins game, length of the ice. So what have you seen from Hagens, not just on the offensive and driving the play, but in all 3 zones?
Yeah, so he's gotten a little bigger. I would say he picked up, 10 to 15 pounds in the off season. He's not as, he doesn't get the puck knocked off him as much anymore as he maybe would last year. And like I said, he's more assertive with it. He knows where his teammates are going to be. He gets it back to the D a lot quicker. He gets pucks up ice faster. So I think just all that and, gaining more experience in college has really helped out in that regard.
Mm. And going back to, the teammates he played with last year and Leonard and Perreault, you mentioned it, 2 All-Americans, like 2 of the focal points on the team. And, I know Hagens is only a sophomore and is truly still young. He's still 18. And there's a lot of guys, there's even some Bruins prospects who have been there. There's been Gasso and Yelvic who have been there for a couple of years. But with him being kind of that franchise style player, has there been more of a leadership aspect that James Hagens has needed to take on this year?
Yeah, I would say for sure, especially with, these younger forwards coming in. They have quite a few younger forwards, like Will Moore. He's another Bruins prospect. Gavin Cornforth and Lana Resendez, 2 younger forwards that came in from the USHL. But not necessarily younger age-wise, but, younger playing wise, less experience. So definitely I assume he's been a mentor to those guys and, really helped him out and getting him acclimated to college hockey.
Now, Hagens, of course, kind of the big win in the draft for the Bruins this past year, but it was actually the second straight year they took a BC Eagle in the first round. A lot was made of Dean Letourneau's freshman season, which you got to see up close and personal as well. 0 goals, 3 assists, 36 games. Even Don Sweeney said, probably a mistake to send him to college that early, especially that high level. Probably should have been playing in the ECHL. But this year, he didn't have a great dev camp for the Bruins, but he goes in there day one, and man, he's making an impact, Anthony. That kid has been a force for BC.
Yeah, he has. I don't know how much the injury was a factor in last year's, campaign. Like the hand situation was never really mentioned by anybody from the staff. We don't get injury reports, so that may or may not have impacted his abilities. But this year, he's taken that stride. They were saying how he kind of stopped the growing process, so he can start developing the skating and the off ice stuff a lot easier. And I would say the biggest improvement with Letourneau is his skating. It's less choppy, it's more of a smoother stride, and he gets up the ice so much faster. Especially when he has the puck. Last year, it was kind of like he was picking up guys late and everything was just, one step behind. But now everything slowed down for him. He's playing with a lot more confidence, and he's even really driving that line that he's been on with Sondrel and Vogt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's kind of, you mentioned like the injury kind of gets swept under the rug in terms of what we're hearing, right? And the other thing to kind of take into account too is the growing process, man. The kid is 18 going into college, man. He's 6'7" and 220. That's a lot of growing that you kind of have to get used to, even in a game where you've been playing your whole life. And I think what's impressed me too, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's not like he's playing rock'em sock'em robots, but he's using his body. And in Hockey East, when you're going up against 23-year-olds, like that's not an easy thing to do, even if you are 6'7" and 220, but you're 18 years old. But he's scoring goals, he's driving play, and he's using the body. It's almost like he's becoming a complete player right before our eyes, and that could speed things up. I think we were thinking another 2 to 3 years for him to make an impact at the NHL level after this. And I'm not saying like, hey, he'll be up in April, but it feels like it's almost catching on a little bit faster than we would have thought at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. He's using his body more strategically.
It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
He's finishing checks. He's, protecting the puck when he's going down the right side. He had a nice assist against UMass by doing that. He wrapped around the net, used his frame well. But yeah, I mean, he's on track to get to the NHL, someday, sooner rather than later. Obviously, it's probably going to be, maybe another season after this one, maybe even one more after that one. We'll never know, but he's really taken the next step, and it's a really pleasant surprise to see that, for sure.
And that is positive for a lot of people whom were thinking, man, is this guy just going to be a bust? Like, did they rush him too much? Is his game just going to be shot because of that? Certainly, I think Dean Letourneau has answered and said, nope, don't write me off just yet. And then we're not done with BC Eagles that the Bruins picked in the first 2 rounds, because after they picked Hagens, they went a little bit more project, a little bit more long-term prospect, and that is Will Moore, who is also playing at BC. He's hasn't quite shot off like a rocket the way Hagens did or Letourneau is doing this year. But what are you seeing from Will Moore?
Yeah, he's one of the more intriguing prospects that they brought in recent years. I mean, the other one being Letourneau, but he's actually caught on, pretty good so far. In that one of those first games versus Minnesota, he got the nice tip for his first goal, and that's one of the areas that he's really, really good in. He's an exceptional, tipper of the puck. He got a second one against Vermont. As far as work on the puck, in terms of play driving, there's some work to do there.
Yeah.
I would say the last game versus Maine was probably his worst of the season, to be honest with you. There was, some turnovers, but those are just growing pains, and those will be ironed out eventually. But he's going to be at BC for 2, if not 3 years. So there's definitely a lot of things he can learn on, build from. And yeah, he's a really intelligent player, especially in front of the net.
And that's what's kind of stood out to me. We're talking about another kid who's 18 years old, right? So there's a lot of development going on at BC, first off. But he's not a huge kid. He's 6'2", which is perfect height, for a center in the NHL. But he's still at 175. He's still kind of where Hagens was at last year in terms of the weight. So were you kind of surprised by how well he's been playing in front of the net in a conference like this?
Yeah, I think he's a very intelligent player, and he gets the net at the right time. He's not the most physical player. He doesn't get there and just, he doesn't go there just to grind. He gets there when the shot's coming. He gets there when the chances are going to be there. And I think the biggest area that he's impressed me, besides, the getting to the net, has been the faceoffs. He's been pretty good in the faceoff circle. Hasn't been fantastic, but that's going to be an area that he's going to be pretty good in once he gets bigger and stronger and uses his leverage better going forward.
And that is something that can take years for centers. As we've seen. You said it, Hagens still is not great at it. Shoot, man, Connor Bedard still isn't that great at it at the NHL level. He's pretty great at a lot of other things. So that's got to be an encouraging sign, I would think, for the Bruins prospects, the Bruins staff who are doing the scouting for the prospects have to feel pretty good about that. And again, we're just scratching the surface, and we don't have all day, which is why I can't go through every single prospect that the Bruins have on this roster. But are there any of these other guys, again, 3 more that we're talking about playing at BC that are Bruins quote unquote property? Any of these other Bruins prospects intriguing you of like, he's had a pretty good start to the season?
Yeah, it's funny because the other 2 out of the rest of the 3 prospects have been injured since, really the start of the season.
Yeah.
Gasso, played through the first, I want to say 3 or 4 games hurt. You could just tell. And then Oscar Yelvic is, day to day with some injury. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't know any of these injuries. They don't tell us stuff like this. So, but yeah, Gasso is, the name to keep your eye on. He's gotten so much better in terms of his, defensive game during his time at BC. He's been a consistent, 30-point guy for us the past 3 years, really.
Yeah. But
in terms of faceoffs, he's been our top faceoff guy the past 2 years. And in terms of penalty killing, he's been really good too. So Gasso is definitely a name that I could see playing for the Bruins someday. And he's just got the NHL build. He finishes checks. Yeah. He's hard on pucks. He's the modern forward. He's going to be great someday for sure.
Yeah, and certainly, you looked at him the last couple of seasons, you're like, okay, that kid could fill out an NHL uniform right now. He's got the size, he's got the frame. Yelvic is a very interesting one to me. of like, you look, he obviously, he battled the injury last year. He's had the injuries this year. But the last time he played a full season back in 23-24, like, he was a damn effective player, 42 points in 41 games. You know, I get it. He was playing with a lot of guys who were prospects now or playing in the NHL now. But that's someone, is that one around BC where they're like, man, if we can just get this kid back on the ice, he could give us another season like that.
Yeah, we need Yelvic back on the ice for us for sure.
And he's 22.
In terms of playmaking, he's probably our best playmaker, other than Hagens, you know. But he's really intelligent on that wing. You know, he gets the puck off fast. He's good on the breakout. He gets it out of ice quick. And in terms of, you know, the power play, if you were to put him in the middle, you know, if you feed him, he gets the puck off to the side fast, and it opens up a lot of opportunities. And you were able to see that, you know, 2 years ago with Cutter Gauthier, like you said, he was able to feed him quite a few times. He was able to capitalize off all those chances and collect a lot of points for sure.
Anthony Smith, Eagles insider, 24/7 sports, covering BC hockey. Man, I could talk all day if we're talking Bruins prospects, but we'll certainly have to check in at other points in the season. Anthony, before we let you go, just let the people know, how can they follow your work and keep up with all the Bruins prospects throughout the season?
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal Twitter is Anthony_Smith89. I post all my work on there. I post game updates, you know, post my articles and recruiting news and stuff like that. And then for the publication itself, it's at BC Eagle Insider on Twitter.
And Anthony is doing this for every single game, like inside and out. Anthony's got it covered. Anthony, I really appreciate you taking the time and joining the show today.
You bet, Cam. Thanks a lot for having me.
There he goes, Anthony Smith, Eagle Insider. We have got more from the Wicked Boston show, but let me know what you think about James Hagens, these Bruins prospects playing at BC, what you're looking for, what you're hoping for from these guys. Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, we come at you live on YouTube every weekday, noon Eastern time, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well. Your lunchtime alternative to Boston Sports Talk Radio right here on the Wicked Boston show.